Hi, Trudi.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good, thank you. How are you?
So lovely to see you. I'm great. Happy
And
Easter.
you? Yes, happy Easter to you. What a different Easter it's been this year.
I know it's been an isolated, contemplative, self-reflective Easter.
Probably the way it's really intended to be in historically in terms of what Easter's all about.
Sure, and you've been with your kids and
Yeah, very different from me. So we live on the beach, and we've been out on the beach and really connecting with our inner children. My really for me connecting with my inner child and them allowing them to be playful. So we're spending a lot of hours on the day just being playful.
amazing.
Mm.
So all of you guys who are viewing this, welcome to Truth, Wisdom, and Freedom Conversations. This is our first episode, and we have here Trudi Bannister, who is a holistic psychologist and also an author for Built for Bliss. And I know Trudi actually from when I used to live in Singapore, and then she moved off to France, and then I moved to Australia, and then she moved to Australia, and now we reconnected. And so it's lovely how things come full circle. And we thought to just gather and get together as most of the world is doing virtually to connect in this new way, to talk more about how we can change from the inside out so that we can move forward instead of feeling trapped in the past by panic, by collective fear, by the uncertainty of what is to come with everything that is happening in the world right now. And you are an expert in bliss. And so we thought to maybe talk a little bit about bliss and what bliss is. I have certainly some ideas and experiences of bliss from a yogic perspective, but I love to hear from you, from your perspective, what bliss is. Where is it? How do we get it?
I love that. That's a perfect introduction, right? How do we get it? It's actually not out there. It's in here. I love that you just did that because I know you're being playful and I know you know where bliss resides. And of course it's within. So that's beautiful. So bliss, it's really interesting. I will proceed my conversation about bliss to talk about how when I wrote the book, Built for Bliss, I was going through a marriage breakdown. I just moved to France, which was a dream, but at the same time, my life, as I knew it, fell apart. So I was called to write this book, as many of you would probably have experienced yourself. Inner guidance comes, and we follow it. So all this bubbling up came about, like accessing true joy. That to access true joy was an inside job and an internal journey, and that no matter what's happening in our outside world, that it's something that we can keep coming back to. So my writing the book about bliss was about, what do I need to clear to get to that real point of resilience so that I can genuinely heal all of the things that had come up with the changing of my life from being in a family unit to being, to solo parenting. So that kind of gives you an understanding, because when I was talking about bliss, and bliss is essentially the experience prior to enlightenment, right? So talking about enlightenment was a bit of a far-reaching, concept. So I thought bliss was, I got the guidance that bliss was the way to go. And so bliss really is about experiencing that true joy, like that true feeling of connection and oneness and peace within your own body.
Yeah, and I think also because language, of course, is not able to articulate the inexpressible, which really is a feeling, it's a sensation, yes. It's a visceral connection from your head to your toes, into your bones, into your cells. And I think in the English language especially, we might confuse the word bliss for happiness or They might be
Yeah.
the same. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day, but we might be using words interchangeably for an experience that may not be expressible.
Yeah.
And oftentimes in Western culture, I find, is that people associate happiness or joy or bliss by this grasping externally, by the accumulation of things or accolades, accomplishments, kind of racking up the resume, the CV, right? And because it's we've been brought up in modern society to think very linearly. We're ascending the corporate ladder. We have these phrases in our language that make us strive and grasp. And when we look at indigenous cultures or Eastern philosophy, and the traditions like the yogis, the Tibetans, right, the people of the Andes, the culture is very much cyclical. It's that there's a rise and a fall to everything. And this is the natural cycle of how life is, right? We cannot be surfing at the top of this wave for an extended period of time. But first of all, it's not natural and it's not sustainable. And we have this perception that, oh my goodness, we want everything to go back to normal. But how can things go back to normal? Because we're in a down wave. We have to stay in the down wave before we can surf the next big wave. And so what we can do at this time is really plant the seeds and cultivate the experiences that are out there waiting for us to come. But if we stay and we kind of go into a place of self-pity or I'm not enough, and going into the old stories of, oh crap, the world is out to get me, and then that then starts to feed onto panic and fear, bliss that's already innately within us is not gonna blossom when that new wave comes, right? And I think we need to differentiate between happiness and bliss in our language, because the yogis talk about bliss as an experience that's felt. It's not something to grasp at. So it's beautiful that you share about you actively choosing, during a period where it could have been a breakdown, which in some ways breakdown and breakthroughs they very much happen together. There's a fine line between them, and you took that, and then you created something out of that. And
so many things you've just touched on, like the challenges are what help us grow, right? We know that. Like we've all seen it. There's stories throughout history of this occurring, and we know in our own lives. So do we take this current challenge and, for one, even see it as a challenge? Yes, there are challenges, but what's affecting us in the present moment in each given moment? So, and also viewing it from the various angles. Yes, there's an economic downturn, resulting, there's collective fear. There are people going through a lot of pain and struggle. On the other hand, we've been called to slow down, which allows us to spend more time with our children. If you didn't normally do that, it allows us to go within. So what you're talking about with everything that's coming up right now for people, this I think is the primary gift. It's also the scary piece. So 9 months ago, when I moved back to Australia from France, I'd lived offshore for 15 years. I did not want to move back. But my guidance from Spirit was go there, go to Australia. And my assumption was that was for my children to have more time with their dad. But now that this is all unfolded, I see that it was for us to be in a different situation. So if we'd been in France right now, it would have been a very, very different story. Instead, we're on a tropical remote beach in far north Queensland. So, and I think there's that's a whole other discussion we can have about following your guidance and intuition and trusting yourself, because this is where we're working towards. Back to the feminine, trusting our intuition, trusting that we're held, trusting that there's more forces than this concrete world.
Yeah, and when we follow that intuition, we follow the guidance, it takes us to where we're meant to be. Yes. So for you, it's taking you to a place of safety. For me, interesting enough, I had a different experience, but then we have a choice as to how things unfold from there. For me, I was living in Singapore and I moved to Australia about 6 months ago now, almost 6 months. And I came just in time for the bushfires. And, so the whole country was on fire and burning.
Yeah.
It was huge, huge tragedy. And also now, with COVID-19. So, and I had sold my business that was very stable, and everything was set in a certain way. I had a certain routine in Singapore that I consciously chose to give up because my guidance was that this is too safe. This is too routine. You need to grow and expand your horizons and break out of your comfort zone and move more into the digital space. So you having a studio is not going to be the long-term picture. I had a studio in Singapore that for holistic healing and yoga and meditation and all of these things, right?
Yeah.
And so here I have something super, super stable, and I followed my guidance because also my partner got a job offer here in Sydney in Australia, and so we followed that guidance. And of course, it just looks like, what is going on? It's like, what did I come to? But then taking that feeling of almost like feeling like you're crashing and using it as fuel to move forward. It's like, okay, let me look for the silver lining here. What is the message? What am I meant to learn, and how am I meant to serve from this place? And that's really where, we have kind of like polar opposite experiences. But I think people who are feeling like that the universe has now punished them or something.
Yeah. Interesting words. Yeah.
You have to remember that there's something we can't see down the horizon.
And so from my experience, when I moved here 9 months ago, the guidance was take everything off your plate. So, I also had a successful practice. Mind you, I do work online, so that didn't necessarily have to change. I was doing a PhD at the time, studying, trauma and mindfulness and, all sorts of ways, healing modalities to place into my PhD. And I was called, take everything off your plate. And, when you get this guidance, you're like, what? Opportunity cost. So this is all feeding into beliefs. So guys, this all feeds into beliefs. Opportunity cost, like, I could be making money. What else am I, all the beliefs that come up, and each individual person would have their own set of them that fly up, because our beliefs are created from the time we're little, and they cycle around in our mind. And so I was called to just be 9 months ago. So I set out to do what I was planning to teach through my PhD, which is settle my nervous system, heal my nervous system, regulate my nervous system, and just let things come up. Just sit every day, let things bubble up. And as you mentioned, I have children. I have 3 of them. So, it's not like I was doing this 24/7, but the hours that they went to school, I spent time every day settling my nervous system, regulating my nervous system, seeing what was coming up. And I'd been doing this for decades. As you know, Johnson, this is how we met, through the healing circles. But my nervous system still was not regulated. It was still dysregulated. I still had things that were coming up. And I think, we as humans, we have these beliefs trapped in our mind, our trauma trapped in our body, and unless we're willing to sit with it, there's that thought. There's that thought. There's that thought again. Where's that in my body? Okay, where's that coming up for me? How does that feel? When I'm going through that, what's happening in my body? What am I feeling? There it is. What does that look like? What does it feel like? What's the texture? If it had words, what would it tell me? So it's fascinating.
Yeah, this is very much the essence of the Buddhist and the yogic teachings: inquiry. Yes. Ask yourself what, where, when, how, why.
Yeah.
Ask all those questions, and not
And
necessarily
beautifully,
looking for answers, but to live the question. And when you
yes,
can actually stop and pause to
yes,
even ask the question, you might discover something about yourself that you weren't expecting. And that's really what most people are afraid of during this big time of pause,
yes,
because they're afraid of what might come back when they ask that question. And when you
yes,
do stop and you look at what's happening with your nervous system, you being a PhD, a psychologist, an author, all of these things, been doing this spiritual work for a very long time, still wondering what's going to come up. It doesn't end. This
absolutely,
is an ongoing process.
yes,
Our fears that we've had when we were 7 or 8 or whatever it was, they still live in our electromagnetic field around us, or
yes,
our aura, if you speak spiritual language, or in quantum science, we call it our information field. Everyone has a
yep,
unique energy field that follows us. And recently I came across, in January, an aura machine, and it scans the stories, the belief systems around
oh,
or your chakras. And it
wow,
picked up issues that I've had and I've been working on with my father, right?
yeah,
Because I have issues with masculine control, and my father trying to, make me into something that I'm not,
yep,
into the straight son that he so desires, instead of me
yeah,
being this gay person, right? And that's this energetic struggle, but that lives. That story is actually imprinted around my third chakra, and it's science is now measuring
yeah,
that. And our belief
interesting,
systems, as we're working on them, they come up time and time again because they're our old wounds resurfacing. And when we have wounds, we have scars. And
yeah,
sometimes the scars are okay and you moisturize it, it's all
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Sometimes the gash kind of splits open and you have to
yes,
tend to it.
yes,
And when
yes,
we're in these times of deep reflection and pause, we have to stop and look at all our scars and like,
yeah.
okay, what needs some bandaging? How do we take care of ourselves? And that's what we really we're being asked to do.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you bring up, your dad's beliefs and what he wanted to try to, funnel you into, because I'm sure everyone listening has had some level of that experience, perhaps not quite so, so intentional and obvious, but we've all been sculpted. The other piece of that is intergenerational trauma. So epigenetics studies show that, what happened to our grandmother and grandfather has been passed on through the genes to the parent and the grandchildren. So, and the effect of trauma on the grandparent has less of an effect on the parent as it does on the grandchild. So 2 generations later, really the effect comes through. So I think that helps us to have a lot of compassion for our parents, for what they're attempting to funnel us into, because actually it's in their genes. Their way to parent has not only been seen and modeled, but it's actually changed the structure of their brain, which I just think, we are fascinating. Humans are utterly fascinating. Don't you think? Isn't that just incredible?
Well, it is. And I think that we for sure, when we're growing up into our young adult years, we often put the blame on ourselves. Like, oh, am I the fault for many of the things that are happening in my life? My parents said this, so now I'm to blame. And we spin things into a story because human beings want to give everything meaning and significance.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, again, part of a conditioned pattern that society says we need to be significant.
Yeah.
If you wanted to just be a farmer, probably in the modern world, they're like, well, don't you want to aspire to be something more? But if that's your true heart's calling, then follow that. But of course, that's looked down on. So unspokenly, that is something that we're programmed to do, to push, to strive, to be something, instead of allowing ourselves to just naturally blossom and unfold and become what we're meant to become. And there is a marriage of doing and being that we need to take into consideration, so that we're not just going with the flow and letting the wind take us wherever, right? And this is something that we have to work on internally. And as you were talking about epigenetics, I also remember listening to some recent research about how 50% of the emotions your mother was feeling, if it was panic or fear or whatever it was, stress, passed through the placenta into you, which is really amazing, because with this new research, we can't blame ourselves and we can't fault our parents, because whether it's a conscious choice of choosing to feel that way or unconscious, it doesn't matter. Right? The fact is that we're linked by blood, right? And that we have to then, if we know that, then we have the choice to either blame and shame and guilt our parents or ourselves, or we can cultivate compassion, and then cultivate these seeds of bliss. Choose. You have two choices, essentially.
And this is the thing, Johnson. We have all been through difficulties and challenges, and we could all blame our parents. We could all blame I could blame my ex-husband for what went on. I could blame, I don't know, whatever. We can blame people. We can blame a boss who didn't give us the right work conditions. We can blame, China right now for being the cultivating this disease, this virus. And the more powerful way is to look at what we can control. So it's interesting, what I found interesting, you're talking about the principles of Buddhism and Taoism and Hinduism and these beautiful spiritual paths, which I've studied, but I've also studied psychology, and they're the same. The principles are the same, which I love. If we can just keep coming back to ourselves and inquire, what's happening for me right now? What does this mean for me right now? How can I be compassionate towards myself and others in this moment? And that helps us it's helped me. And this is also what I teach, and this is what we teach in mindfulness. Come back to now. What's real for me now? What's happening in my body now? So trying to slip below the thoughts, because the thoughts get us into trouble. We have, as you know, thousands and thousands of thoughts a day. And of course we can't be conscious of all of them all day long. That's just not the way we're designed to operate. But most people spend 99% of their time unconscious. Like, it's mind-blowing. So these thoughts are slipping through our minds of, oh my God, there's more cases of COVID-19. Oh my God, the world economy is falling apart. Oh my God, I can't travel. Oh my God, my mum. Oh my God, my elderly, whatever it is, my kids, my lifestyle, whatever. And we can go down there. We can downward spiral into fear and worry and concern. And does that change a thing?
Well, it changes your health for sure.
Right.
You're just adding more stress hormones and flooding your body into a fight response. Right.
And so this is the thing. It does change something. It changes our immune system. It changes, it affects our window of tolerance. So we go into fight or flight or freeze.
Yeah.
We then are gripped with fear. We then might comfort eat. We might online shop. We'll scroll. We'll find ways to distract ourselves. And it's bringing me pain in my heart to even, the idea is just sit.
Yeah, sit, and I hear this a lot from some people, especially this behavior is very much tied into the phrase where people say, oh, I just can't wait for things to get back to normal again. And I hear this. And
sorry, guys.
It's just not gonna. How can it?
It's gone. It can't.
Normal's gone.
That normal is gone.
Sure.
And what is normal anyway? Like, life is so different for everybody. So your normal is gone. Actually, everyone's normal is gone. Everyone's normal is gone in some way, shape, or form. Some people have been little affected because they're kind of off the grid and out of mainstream, but most people have been affected dramatically.
Yeah. What do you think about being in a group for group work? Is it easier to do all of this work in a group? Is it easier to do this by yourself? What would you recommend people to do?
I think So I've done it. I work with individual clients. I've run retreats for up to 13 people. And I've also done this work with kids, which is really lovely. But obviously you do it in gentler ways and bring out the beliefs and stories, in beautiful, gentle ways. I feel that, we need to get ourselves to the point where we can share in groups before we share in a group, right? So for some people that's uncomfortable, and this all comes down to our beliefs and our willingness to be seen and heard, our experience of ever having been seen or heard. If you've never been seen or heard, some people love going into groups and talk, and oh my God, I've got an audience and this is fantastic. Other people who haven't been seen or heard or felt like being told to shush or quiet or keep it to yourself, or there's a family unspoken rule or consciously spoken rule of like, we've got secrets, keep the secrets, what goes on in the family must stay in the family. And there's a lot of that in all of society, like these rules in families that we all adhere to that are actually dysfunctional patterns. But we're so ingrained in these codependent, emotionally enmeshed dysfunctional patterns that we don't even see. We wake up one day and we're like, oh my God, that pattern keeps repeating in our family, from our family experience into our relationships and our friendships. And maybe there's something to look at here. Yeah. So I think there's a place for group stuff. And I absolutely love working with groups because people do learn from each other. And
I love that. Yeah. And I love the communal aspect of building community and tribe, because everyone that comes up or arrives together in a group, they're all perfect for each other and they're all each other's medicine.
Yes.
And actually in recent research in quantum science, they show the importance of a witness. Yes. And in Buddhism, you call that the witness conscious.
Yes.
And when we're witnessed, or in other words, seen, heard, met,
yes,
and we're
understood, valued, respected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's something that shifts in consciousness by being witnessed by someone else's consciousness. And when you have many people in a group forming a circle around you, this is what the indigenous people did with story time around the fire, with the songs, with the rituals, with ceremony. This was a regular part of their daily practice, getting together at night, campfire, and then they would ritualize everything and celebrate everything. Yeah. And now that we have all of this time, I've been seeing in a lot of these online communities, ecstatic dance. People are gathering together to dance together. People are gathering to sing songs. People are creating art together. People are gathering in these little Zoom, little communities. Yeah. And that is something that, of course, it would be nice to do it live, but because of the situation, we're doing it virtually. But that's something we're innately being drawn to do because we're wired that way, to be in community. And when we're going so fast, right, we can't. There's no room for that. But now we have room, we have space for that. So I think, if anything, we can leave the viewers with that piece of advice. Find community, find some place to plug into, so that you don't feel alone, because when you do feel like an island on your own, there's no way that you can move towards this state of bliss.
Well, actually, I think this is the interesting part, right? If you can come, because this is so interesting, because the experience of bliss has traditionally been, the yogis on the Himalayan mountains in complete isolation for 30 years, right? And now we're being called spiritual enlightenment. Doesn't come through, that's not the way that we're being
isolation
asked. Yeah. So it's super interesting now that we're being asked to come back. So the concept has been through pranic healing and various other ascended masters that I'm interested in the work of. Spiritual enlightenment today is in society. But now, interestingly, we're being called to isolate, though most of us live in communities, most in our own little family community, So certainly coming back to communing within your family of origin or your created family. And yeah, doing these things. Me and my kids have always spent a lot of time together, but they're all downstairs mindful coloring right now, creating things to express what's going on for them today. Like, you know, a weekend would normally be sport, like go, you know, do this, do that. And so now they've got all this time to mindful color to express their inner world. And I'd invite anybody to mindful color to express their inner world, to do some artwork, to bring the inside out, to meditate, just even for a couple of minutes, sit quietly, to feel what's coming up for you. Yeah, perfect.
I spent a few hours weaving this the other day because I felt that I needed to just do something artistic to express what was happening. And now this weaving I've made is on my altarpiece for sure.
I love that. Look at your colors. The chakras are all in. Yeah, how beautiful. So can you tell us about that, Johnson?
Well, this is a mandala, or this ojos de Dios, which from the native people in central Mexico, they weave these as blessings and gifts to little ones as protection. You can also give it to someone as a gift. And I was doing some ancestral meditation and honoring of my ancestors, and which is very important since we were talking about epigenetics, and that was coming up a lot. And I never knew my grandparents because they all pretty much died before I was born, because of communism and war and all of this, and my parents were refugees, right? And so I felt this very big need to create some sort of symbol to honor them, and not the trauma and the wounds that, you know, my family, my mother and my father bring from that time of chaos. And I don't have any pictures of them. So I thought, okay, well, I want something on my altarpiece that inspires that. And so I wove that as a symbol of offering, that's also inviting peace into the family line. So I just started weaving, and this is something that I've done for a few years, weaving mandalas. And this happened when I was in a down wave, when I broke my knee about 4 or 5 years ago, and I couldn't really move. So I was on crutches, I was at home, and so I started weaving. And so this is kind of like, we're all stuck at home. We have moon boots on, and COVID-19 feels
interesting.
So, you know, if you feel like you're not being productive, you may not be productive in the quote unquote normal sense of the word, and making the amount of money you want to make, or getting the accomplishments and whatever it is that you thought you were going to get. But now you have all of this space and time to go inwards and to look at the other aspects of you, the artistic part of you, the part that wants to sing and dance, all of the more feminine aspects of yourself. And that's a really beautiful thing. Yeah.
You know, they're all the childlike aspects of ourselves as well. Like time to jump up, and, you know, we're dancing a lot, and, you know, doing hours of exercise each day, and, you know, it's childlike, it's playful, it's a beautiful thing. And the other piece of that is releasing the roles. So releasing ourselves from, I'm the, you know, successful this, that, or the other. And this is what I'd done 9 months ago when I renounced all of my worldly accomplishments and started meeting people, and they would say to me, oh, you know, because I'd moved to a whole new place. Nobody knew me here. We moved to our holiday home, but I didn't know anyone. And so people would say to me, oh, hi, like, you know, who are you, sort of thing. And I'd be like, oh, I'm not working right now. Yeah. And I just kept trying that on, and I kept trying it on, and I kept trying it on. And it became very comfortable. I was no longer saying, oh, you know, I work as a psychologist, and, you know, blah, 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 and I'm world renowned in this, and I'm accomplished in that, and I have this fabulous book. Nobody knew that I was an author for the first 6 months of me living here. it was not until the anniversary of my book being published that I actually put something on social media, and then everyone was like, "Oh my God," you know, or very few people anyway. It has been for sale in the bookshop here, and
sure,
you know, so people were sort of slowly piecing it together, but I hadn't talked about it so much.
And that's beautiful. It's a stripping away of identity,
Yes.
which really is about expectation, because when we start attaching ourselves to certain accomplishments through labels, which is great, right? It satisfies a certain part of ourselves, the prideful self,
yes,
the self that wants to be acknowledged and seen, right?
Yes.
And then there's a certain point in time when we need to let that part of self rest. And when that part of self can rest, and the other parts of self can then slowly come out, the part of self that is just content in being in the moment without anything, without any attachment to any label, without being called anything. And then when we can come to this place of unimportance or insignificance, that is very freeing. Yes. I don't care anymore who I am when I'm being called to. And then you can step back in later on, and from that new place, that new vantage point of being unimportant, you can now be important in a very new way.
Yes,
and
which I love.
Paradox.
You spoke about that the last time I did something with you, and I loved that, you know, the play. And I guess this is all related to we harvest sometimes. We plant, we harvest, we reap. We plant, we harvest, we reap. It's kind of like these cycles. Letting go of all of the I'm this, I'm that allows you to come back to saying, I'm enough as I am. I'm worthy as I am. I'm worthy of your friendship and being seen and heard and having an interaction with you, a spiritual relationship with people, because I don't do small talk. I don't do, I don't go little. I'm not really a chit chatter. Like, if I'm your friend, we go deep, and we know each other and we love. And you know, I've fortunately been able to meet some people where I live who are very, very available to that real emotional availability, which is another belief or another way of life that becomes installed in us. If our parents were emotionally unavailable, it's another way of being that we can, you know, if they were unavailable to us and therefore didn't see us, didn't hear us, didn't understand us, weren't willing, didn't have the skills to see us, then our belief may have been created that I'm not worth seeing, I'm unworthy, I'm not enough.
Sure.
You know, I'm going to do this now. Like, I've got this new degree. You know, do you love me now? I did this. Did you love me now? I wrote this book. Do you love me now? And you recognize that the person's really just not going to ever see you because they can't see their own light. Yeah. So we can only see others or go as deeply with others as we can go as we've learned to go with ourselves.
For sure.
You know?
Beautiful.
Oh my God, we could just keep talking.
We can keep talking on and on and on. And
maybe we'll have to do another one.
We'll have to do another one. But thank you so much for sharing and for, you know, just having this conversation about truth, wisdom, and freedom. And it's always lovely to see your face.
Yeah, you too.
Share your beautiful light. So
thank
you so much.
And you too. And maybe another time we could do a group healing, a live group healing as well.
Let's do it. Let's get together, create, collaborate.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching.
Yes, thank you.
Feel free to comment below and let us know if you have any questions, and we're happy to reach out. Or
what you'd like more of.
Yes.
What you'd like to, if there was anything in here, if I can just say this quickly, Johnson, if there's anything in here that didn't feel like it was complete for you, or you'd like more information on it, please feel free to comment, and one of us will meet you right where you are.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much. All right, Trudi.
Bye. Have a great day, guys, or evening or morning, wherever you are.
Wherever you are. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.